give access to sharing the screen to all of us so we don't communicate about this later.
Yep, I've already done that. Yeah, so yeah, I'm very happy that we're all here. This is actually the biggest meeting of the Architecture Advisory Board / working group that we've had thus far. And yeah, I think it's also really wonderful how there are so many, there's such a strong presence from the foundation itself. You know, for a very long time, we've been very eager to learn more about what is taking place at the foundation, and so hopefully this will be that moment. So we are on a very tight schedule. My name is Nika Axel. I think most people, not everyone knows each other here, but for the sake of time, I would kind of put the motion on the table that we skip introductions. I'm afraid that introductions will take, you know, like 15, 20 minutes, and I know that we're all pressed. But so maybe, you know, the people who are presenting, if you could do a very short introduction of kind of who you are, or let's say what your role is, that would be ideal. And yeah, so the plan for the day is 5 presentations from the foundation about the research projects that are currently or have been going on. These will be quite quick. They will last about 5 minutes each. After that, there will be a short question and answer session. I would ask that the main points of discussion remain until after, in about an hour. And then we will be having a short presentation by Manуель Герц, who is currently working with the foundation to design and build a synagogue on the site of Bабин Яр. So I trust that we are all familiar enough with the project where we can just start straight away. So first on the list that I was sent by Anna, we have Oleg Showvenko. I'm not sure if I'm sorry, the list was like, we have another bit order, so, and we know the order, so we'll start. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you.
There we go. Okay, so yes, please take us away.
Hi, everyone. I will be first. Do you hear me? Everything is okay? Yes. Nice to meet you. My name is Anna Fullman. I'm a head of names project, and I will be glad to share you information about our activities. The names project goals is to create more accurate and complete list of all the victims of the Bабin Yaru tragedy, and identify previously unknown names, clarify different biographical details. You can now see short video on the screen, and based on the analysis of available materials that we have compiled a list of all people who died in Babin Yaru, collected and analyzed various sources, archival list, memory books, and combined this in one big names database of Babin Yaru victims. Now this base contains more than 19,000 names, and you can find this information in our website. The research group verified more than 3,500 names for 10 months. Of this, more than 900 are new names, which have been recovered at first. We concluded agreement with Yad Vashem and State Archival Service of Ukraine, and received from Yad Vashem a full victims list of people from Kiev. And our next step is to compare and combine their database with and update our website page. We hope that we finish this work in December or in January. Our team of scientists and research group examines Kiev archives every day. Also, we did the first research of recovering names in Lvivska Oblast, Samber, and Ralevsky Forest. This year, we started making electronic copies of archival documents that contain information about Kiev's pre-war population, occupation of the city, Holocaust, prisoners of war. And today, our foundation have more than 500,000 documents in our archive. And these records are unique. It helps to reconstruct the largest collection of Kiev residents' names for 20th century and involve general public to our activities because everyone wants to know new facts about their relatives and about family history. So we give people those opportunity. And we have ambition goal, find all names, which is possible, of course, and become the owner of the largest database of archive materials and of the victims' names also. So thank you for your attention. We'll be glad to answer any questions if you have.
I just have a quick one. I should probably know this, but what is the estimate for the total number? And what you said you were, and the second question is, you said that you were about to, I think, compile your database with another database by December. So if you're at 18,000, how many are in the other database? I'm just wondering, how close are we to like the total number estimated?
I can maybe.
No.
Yeah, please, Anna.
Yes. Now, if we analyze our results for this autumn, because last update in our website was in September, we can now say that we find more than 35 new names only for this autumn in our research. And this our amount of people that we have flexible. It's changed every day and every week. In our website now is more than more than 19,000 yes names, and we hope that when we finish this work with combining Yad Vashem names, that we will have I think that we will have more than twice as much names that now.
So let's say roughly 40,000. What is that? What is the estimated total that were murdered? How many?
There's nobody know. The thing is, there's nobody know it's precise. We know that in the first 2 days was killed around 34,000 people, and altogether it's probably around 100,000.
Got it. Okay.
But it was never. Nobody tried to make one database, and nobody tried to compare the whole information. And because we digitalized all the archives, which was never digitalized, we don't know yet. We hope it's probably like that, because it's probably like Anna think that it's probably another 19,000-20,000 we will find, but it's nobody know, because we just do this work. We digitalizing archives, we compare the information, because it was like family name and the family. For example, Rabinovich and his family. How many people in the family? Who is the people in the family? And then we can have the precise names, where they live, and so on. The ideal result, what we believe, that we will have the whole information about maybe about all the people who lived who lived that time in Kiev, because we're digitalizing archives from beginning of 20th century.
Wow. Okay.
everything, like all the military archives, German occupation archives, synagogues, churches, all the lists, all possible archives, but was never digitalized before. And then when we compare information, we will get the names, but we also will get the names of neighbors of these people, and also we'll have names of people who lived before in these flats, who live after in the flats of victims of Babin Yar. We can also try what we're trying to do to find people who moved out before and after. We'll try to find the family. It's long durational process. In Yad Vashem.
Sorry, I need to interrupt you because for the sake of time, we do need to move on to the next presentations.
Yeah.
If we can continue this discussion later.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'm the next one. If you can see my screen, can you confirm that, Nick?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Max, and I'm representing the team of the Center for Special Technologies. We are an external collaborator, though we work very closely with the fund. And the basic kind of lens through which we look at the issue of Babin Yar is territory. If you can see the image on the left, the Babin Yar of 1943. It's kind of, especially for people who know Kiev well, it kind of looks shocking, especially if they haven't seen it before, because it doesn't look in any way like it looks today, the territory. Our assumption is that that doesn't help with the memory about the place, that there's a kind of the landscape which that event took place is completely gone. What we are doing is we are collecting all different forms of media, including photographs, videos, aerial photos, topographic maps, and historic research. And we're trying to kind of put them together into one environment. So basic 3D model is relatively boring with those who knows how to deal with like topographic information, except also we kind of try to be as precise as possible, working with some sort of deformations of maps, making sure that each building on each year is kind of aerial photos or contemporary photos from the satellites are exactly well matched. For that, we apply some sort of formulas to deform different maps, but in general, the main aim is to have everything overlaid and not just photographs, but also 3D models that we produce out of the sort of topographic maps of 1924 and 1953 kind of topographic maps. So yeah, this is relatively simple technical work, which kind of then gives us a chance to see some things that were unseen before. For instance, here you can see trucks in the sand quarry of Babin Yar where people were undressed before their shooting. And the trucks are excavating sand in 1939. And this moment is clearly seen from overlaying 4 different pictures of taken from a German airplane in 1939. So other than building these 3D models of landscape at large, we also do some more nuanced work with photographs and videos. This pictures you probably are familiar with. They're Johannes Helle's photographs, supposedly 1st of October 1941, straight before the mass executions. Everything on these images is very closely looked at and researched. Every bush and every object that didn't move is then translated into the 3D model, which helps us to understand how the kind of the terrain was and where the photographs were taken from exactly. So, I mean, again, like forensic architecture is a good reference here for us. We've used many of techniques that are pioneered by them. And here you can see the exact kind of location from which the photo was taken, overlaid into the 3D map. So kind of, again, fairly simple technical work that allows us to understand the territory much better. And to make things like this for the foundation, where we can identify, for instance, Johannes Hölle's photographs, where they have been taken, kind of clearly understand how this territory works. These two photographs belong to Karl Berghoff's archive, which means that we cannot publicly show them. But they were, like, especially this photo was really important to understand what's going on. I don't know if you need to know this, but the whole story about the sand quarry was quite a bit of a puzzle, and kind of there was discussion between historians. So some of these things helped clarify the kind of situation that was. Again, I don't know how well are you familiar with the territory. Just for your reference, historians could not agree about the place of shooting in kind of the scale of 1 kilometer. So it's not about, like, even at this place where exactly things took place. Contemporary Kiev has this quite big Melnikov Street here, and another group of historians were claiming that the shootings took place on a completely different site. So hopefully these photographs and their location on the map helped to clarify some of those things. I was asked by Anka and Ilya to speak a bit longer, if that makes sense, Nick. I don't know if, I'm pretty sure I can fit into a couple of minutes more.
Sure. I mean, yeah, as long as it fits in the overall.
I guess this is because the project is kind of about studying the territory and about kind of more architectural things that can be helpful for the board. But we also look at object architecture mostly that kind of still exist today, that were witnesses of the event. So they exist in a very different form. Some of them are weird supermarkets. Some of them are kind of historic preservation, taking care of buildings. So there are just two buildings here on the crossroad of Melnikov and Pugachev Street, and it's very close to the place where people were gathered to then be led towards Babin Yar. And things like this we do photogrammetry of, so we kind of look at how these things are today. We see their general structure, and we see that they didn't change that much over the years. So this is a photograph from, it's actually a still from the 1943 walk around with journalists who were walking the same trajectory as the victims of Babin Yar. So here you see the two buildings that basically are the same space today. And these photos were also very helpful to understand the trajectory of people towards Babin Yar. This is a Jewish cemetery, which we will, I'm sure the people are discussing in the board. This is a building that also still exists today, which is a building of Jewish cemetery headquarters. I don't know how to call it. Yeah, basically these are locations that we're quite closely looking at. We also are modeling some things, and in the end we again get this kind of forensic architecture looking things where we can jump from any 3D scene towards some sort of videos of specific moments in time, this is again 1943 footage from the same walk of journalists who were trying to replicate the way towards Babin Yar, and we have videos from that walk. Each video is literally 1.5 seconds, but they're very helpful at, for instance, identifying this building, which is a fire station of the tank manufacturing kind of industrial thing. These photos are also important because they show the entrance to the Jewish cemetery. Basically, we kind of are being this agent which tries to bring the history towards kind of the places that we know. Actually, our office is located right around here. It's not in the frame, but it's very close. Every time we go to lunch, we go around here. So these places are also very familiar to us. Kind of strange to see these things happening so close. We are currently working with locating some of these images. This work is much more complex because there's no clear terrain elements or buildings that are easily identifiable. We think that we know where this photo was taken, which is in the beginning of the Rogozhitska Street, which also proves the theory of some historians who claim that people go this way. Most of historians think that way. This is not much of a controversy. But so here you can see the photographs on the way to Babin Yar. Not necessarily taken in 1941, but these are the places that people passed on the way. So we are studying both the places of shootings and the way there. And this is where kind of our work is connecting this more abstract 3D model, which you see here, then overlaying with photographs and aerial shots, and then locating these things. Like each photograph is a pink circle, and each building or an object that didn't move, and we used in our research to establish something, is a blue circle. And this was the part that probably is important for you. I'll very quickly run through the part that is a bit more research oriented. To understand each of these places, we basically very closely read historic materials. Obviously, it's very hard to understand what happens on these photographs that I showed you before without that. So there are a lot of explanations from historians, including Martin Dean, who kind of takes a bit more geographic take on understanding these things. And from the very beginning, we basically started to archive this research. So we have documents arranged in one database. We understand that we have different actors who took place in this event. We categorize them. We basically take each statement of witnesses and we divide them into bits. And these bits we enrich with metadata. So these are places that people mention in their story. These are processes, like for instance, counting victims at one of the checkpoints. These are actors, these are objects, different things that help us build this kind of enriched with metadata, very small scale kind of array of data. And then each of these stories goes into our database with all of this metadata, which means that they're searchable. We're now looking at ways to understand these materials with neural nets, which kind of seems doable. And yeah, I'll quickly show where this goes. We have this kind of way to connect, already interpret some of these materials. So for instance, we have a Jewish cemetery, and we have it mentioned in different testimonies in different ways, even in different languages. So we just connect these categories together. And this helps us to build this map, which is based on witness testimonies, which we think is really important, also even as a way to look at geographic kind of information. And here you can see, like, for instance, I'm selecting the Rogozhitska Street, and I can see all the witness testimonies that mention this street. I can understand, if I pick some piece, what are the objects, processes, actors who were kind of mentioned in this thing. All of this is also a stuff from Anna Foreman's project. These are victims' addresses already kind of built into our platform, where you can check where someone lived. And we are kind of thinking about building a simulation of ways people went through the city towards Babin Yar. So this is an attempt to look at things in a holistic way. I know you probably can't read most of these, but the idea is that the basic raw 3D model connected with photographs and videos, and then connected with this kind of spatial information from witness testimonies that explains how people saw this event. And it very often says very high granularity things that are not visual, but the person can say, at this crossroad, people did this and this, and there were dogs, and there was this and this. So these things are really important for us research-wise, but also we want to make them available for general public. That's why we're building this kind of web-based exploration map, where you can click different spots, or it's probably not a good word, but you can click on different spots and read the sort of different things, including the witness testimonies, which refer to some locations, but also just look at photographs and read explanations of what you can see. Sorry, this is, shouldn't have sound. Yeah, basically, the idea is that we do this kind of actor network theory kind of scheme where we have different entities that are connected with each other, and they're connected in a way which kind of helps us to understand certain events in a certain way. For instance, looking at two different locations and understanding how to kind of in the closest way connect them with each other. So this is the logic that we will then use to build this mechanism of suggesting different photographs and different entities that are visible on the map. Sorry I took so long, but I think this is it.
Yeah. Nice, thank you. Thank you very much. Very nice work. Can I ask who is next?
I'm the next. Could you, Dasha, please share the slides? My name is Anna, and most of you are already familiar with me.
Just one thing. If you have a question to Max, that we don't. Do you have any questions to Max? To Maxim, who just finished presentation.
Yes, I have one question. I just typed it in the chat box. That is, of the addresses from which the victims of Babin Yar in September 1941 were taken, do you have a guesstimate of how many of these addresses still exist? I mean, as a physical place. Has it all been redeveloped, or 10% exists, or 70% exists? It's just, you know, very rough.
Yeah, we didn't particularly look at that, but the area where most of that is the known Jewish area in Kiev, and a lot of buildings there are still existing, and we kind of looked at those things, and we plan to work with that actually much closer. There is that area takes almost 70% of kind of the addresses, but the other areas where people live, they're very much redeveloped. So I would say that I don't necessarily know the exact percentage of places that are still there, but the very large amount of the places that were in the kind of Jewish area of Odile, they still exist.
Yeah, just as a thing, in Amsterdam, there's the way of memorialization has really moved in the past decade away from places where Jews were concentrated to be sent to Westerbork and Auschwitz and Sobibor, and it's now brought back to actually the houses from which they were deported. So there's a clear shift in that, which actually I think is very interesting.
Well, I think we already also kind of looked at that, but yeah, we'll continue with that work, and it's a good point.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks.
Anya.
Yes. So, hi again. And next. So we started like last March research of the territory, and we are planning a publication of it next year. Could we move further? So the very first idea we had for the museum, that there should be kind of a holistic approach to the exposition, the territory in the architecture, and inward architecture is something that is formed by the exposition projects and the site. So that's why territory is so important to know in detail its history and myths. And we'll talk about it later. Can we move? We checked, like, very important to understand what are the borders of our consideration. And here you see, so all the historical places, also all the existing monuments at this time. And if we go further, so this is in a way that our borders of our consideration to, in a way, analyze and think of the Bабин Яр territory. Next. Yeah, and as you saw, the territory has changed rapidly. So all the area was flattened, and a huge urbanization process happened to this territory. Later, next. And we look at the territory through the very different points of view, from the ecological, geographical, and urban architecture, many different layers. And we think that it is important to understand, from the very beginning, how the ravine also was formed, because in a way it's something that make this happen, especially here. So the place is very important, and it might be one of the main, if not the main, exhibit for the Babin Yar story. Next. So we looked at the place at the research from the very first building that appeared there. So it was the church, Kirillivskaya church, and later monastery, and then up to now. Later, next. So you can see how the place looked at the beginning of the 12th century, not 12th, but yeah, 14th. Next. The ravine. Next. What were the buildings there? The first one, so this is a church, the hospital that was in a way in symbiosis relations to the church. And now we know that the church became quite big. It's one of the biggest in Ukraine, mental hospital. Next. So by the area, there was a military camps that later, during the Second World War, became Syretsky camp, where many activities related to Babin Yar tragedy took place. Next. There was a Jewish hospital that became important point for appearance a Jewish cemetery over there. And by the ravine, we know that there were many cemeteries. Next. So here you see two different ways of interpretation at the borders of the cemeteries. And we are also doing research on precise borders of those interpretations. Yes, so we're trying to understand this story. And we know, yeah, and later, after the tragic events, there happened this huge tragedy that was called Krunyevskaya tragedy, when huge amount of water with dust and leftovers from the nearby factory where the dam was broken, and this water with dust covered part of the city, causing a lot of deaths and the construction of the area. Next. Yeah, and later, after the strategy, a lot of buildings were built on this place of the cemeteries, and also the park was built at the place of the ravine, which was flattened. And all this kind of circle of things that happen to the territory are very important and essential when we think about the place. Yes, so to tell the story about this place, we have to dig inside. Next. Yeah, so this is a neighborhood which was built right by the ravine and partially also on the ravine. And we know now, thanks to the research that Center for Special Technologies did, that some of the pictures were located right at the housing courtyard. So we know that partially the mothers were done right beneath that street and at the housing place. Next. We also look at all the projects were done for this place, all the competitions for the commemoration, and look at the commemoration story of the place in close. Next. Yeah, so this is one of the biggest monuments staying right now at the Babin Yar. Next. Yeah, and we also look at the rivers that formed the ravine at the time when it was formed, and what happened to them later. Next. And now they are underground. Next. And we also look, give a close look to all the nature, and you know, this idea of succession, not the idea, but the process of plant development. And through this kind of glasses, you can understand what actually happened to the ground, to the soil of the place, because you understand what is by those plants, what is the story of the ground. Yeah. So we next we can see on the map the different areas. Some of them were just relatively new planted areas, and some of them have more original nature. Next. So we look at all the plants are there, all the animals. Next. Yeah. Next. And we also look at the mix of the place. So it is important to combine all the very humanitarian knowledge, but also the cultural part. So for instance, we know that the alley, the main alley that existed right now at the Babin Yar was planted with trees, name of which in Latin popular, and populus, yes. And if you go into in the root of this word, you understand that it's about people. So the people in a way grew up through the soil that where people were killed. Yes, later. Next, please. And yeah, and I very shortly show that the linkage we're trying to build through the researches we are doing with the exposition projects, and this is one of the projects. So we, thanks to the research of the 3D model and the locating of the photos, now we have possibility to next to find the precise locations where those photos were taken, and we put special like kind of stones with the possibility to look inside and see the pictures that were made there. So people look in the side of the stone and they see the pictures. Can you please go back very fast? Yes, so, and they see those pictures that were taken there. So this is kind of a linkage and a short story about the research we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Are there, I want to ask two questions. One is, are there any questions? The other is, how many more presentations are there from the foundation side? But maybe we can start with a quick question.
I think it just with 1, 2, it's like 4 more projects. 2 of them will present. I will present, and 2 others will present by somebody else.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Ines, did you have a question? No. Okay, sorry. I thought I saw some hand raised. All right. If there are no questions, then I would suggest that we move on to the next projects. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Ілля Шовенко. I'm the head of library, publishing, and collections projects. And I want to tell a couple of words about these projects. So obviously, our main goal is to create a unique collection suitable for a world-class Holocaust memorial. It means in realm of the Holocaust by bullets, not just to recollect the artifacts of the Holocaust itself, but to reanimate the world that has gone forever. Library will become not only the research facility for public, but not only the research facility, but public space where people of Threads and visitors of museum could spend their time thinking about whatever they want. Entire publishing program is aimed to discover the most important books about the Holocaust for Ukrainian society, as well as publishing previously unknown sources as diaries, memoirs, and plus to translate to Ukrainian important intellectual texts. Thus, we collect rare books as well as 1,000 very common books. Rare books you can see on those slides. We aim to create the biggest repository of knowledge about the Holocaust in Ukraine. Here you can see a couple of very rare, also very illustrative pieces. There is a propagandist book published by Occupational Administration in 1943 telling about the visit of Reichsleiter Rosenberg to Ukraine. A lot of propagandist stuff there. Also, two books made straight after World War II in 1944, in 1945, 1946 by Ukrainian nationalists. One of them depicting in drawings everyday life in Auschwitz. Another one depicts the everyday life in Buchenwald. And at the same time, author never saying a word about Jews, which is, I find, quite an interesting thing. Other one is the Soviet book, also made in 1944, where you could still find an information about Jews slaughtered, and the other one, which is made in 1946, and didn't tell a single word about Jews, because in 1946 became the process of fight against cosmopolitization, which as you know, finished in the process against Jews and Jewish committee. So for last about 9 months, we collected around 300 of such rare books, which tells, as to me, history in its own words. Then documents. Not the archival one, but those that could be found in personal archives. Here's the example. Previous slide, please. On the left, you can see the personal record from the factory of Romanovskaya Galina Mendeleevna, a Jew. And on the right side, you can see the letters written by the Jürgen Strupp, which is who is famous like a Nazi perpetrator who made such a famous thing like Warsaw Ghetto Elimination Report. Things like this. We trying to find things like this and collecting this and made them available for public, for scholars, for academics and non-academics, for all those who interested on our website. Next slide, please. With describing it and made it available in 3 languages. But I think the most important thing for us, for now, or most important media, is the photos. We collected about 12,000 photos this year, very different. Mostly it's vernacular photography, as seen, which shows very everyday life of not only Jewish community, but mostly, but everyday life of the whole of Ukraine. Our earliest photo is dated back to, please, previous slide. Our earliest photo is dated back to the beginning of the era of the photography. It's literally made from daguerreotype, and you can see it on the left. This man is a Jewish merchant, which lives just 2 blocks from our current office on Raitarska Street. And the latest is dated back to 70s, maybe 80s, and it's personal archives of Jewish families that sometimes just finished their stories, sometimes just immigrated to Israel, and not very different stories. We got about like 10 or 12 archives now and the stories behind them. So we trying to put all this stuff, please next slide, on our website, but we making such typology, we never forget about collecting the stories of war and the Holocaust itself. So here you can see the photo from liberated Kiev in like 1943. It's the heart of the city. Next photo, please. Sorry, what's up with presentation? Excuse me, do you see the presentation? Okay. This is the photo taken by German servicemen. It's Soviet POVs, prisoners of war around Kiev. Or about 500,000 people got encircled and imprisoned, and many of them finished their lives in Srebrenica camp, which Anna told you about. So, but among them, the most important thing for us is the certain evidences of the Holocaust. Please, next slide. Those 8 photos from personal album of German servicemen of Luftwaffe shows us everyday life of war, struggle, etc. But the photo in the left corner, subscribed Julian Zlolochev, is one of very few evidences of elimination of a community in Zlolochev, which existed since 16th century. So we are collecting all this stuff in our digital library for now, and I hope that we will make them available in our physical space in nearest future. And please, next slide. Here is how it looks now. We're collecting in collections, thematical, and you can also find all those stuff separated in different media. And finally, a couple of words about books. This year we published we supported publishing of four books in Ukrainian. All of them published in Ukrainian for the first time. Among them, I think, very famous Mouse by R. Spiegelman. And we made a book. Next slide, please. A photo book about our photo collection, which I will be happy to send to all of the guests we got there, where the results of our 9 months work is available. Thank you.
Thank you, Oleg. Any question to Oleg?
I would very much like one of those books. It's incredible work that you've been doing.
Yeah, please, Oleg. Please can you, that some of the books what we published in Ukraine, it's important book, which will quite known everywhere, but they will never published in Ukraine, and it's happened. And the book with a photo book with our collection, what we collect in last 9 months. The plan is to have every year this kind of book and to collect more and more photos. And actually, from now, we are ready for exhibition. We can create exhibition from very different elements. And one of the elements is the next project. It's project by Sergei Loznitsa. It's a Ukrainian film director who won many prizes, the main prize in Jet Garden Cannes Festival. And he's very famous for his documentary work, mostly, but he did also fiction movies. And he spent many years to research a theme of Babin Yar. And we're doing with him project which is called Babin Yar Context. And we're trying to collect all the materials, all the chronic around Babin Yar, because the question is how it's happened. And we have We have materials from Ukrainian Film Archive, from Russian Film Archive. And to answer to Robert's question, yes, it's possible to work with Russian archives still, because this kind of topic is possible. We also did a big search, and we keep doing it in German archives. And we find a lot of unique footage, which was never seen before. Also, it's a private footage, because some of German soldiers, officers have on 8mm camera. And then we will publish every couple of weeks. We'll publish one of the episodes. Now it's 8 of them is done. Finally, we'll make 2 movies. One of them, Babin Yar Context. Another movie is Kiev Process. It's about the process of 1946, which happened in Kiev. It's kind of like Nuremberg process in Russia about Second World War and Nazis in Ukraine. And we will have like 2 movies. We will publish also the small episodes can be discussed. We also find footage from pogrom in Lviv, for example, film footage, which was never seen before. And we'll also prepare installation. We will have screens and the sound, and we will. It's kind of like art installation where we can come inside and we can see what kind of context actually the whole story is happening. What's happened before Second World War, what's happened during Second World War, and what's happened after. And according of tragedy, it's this event when from the bricks factory, I don't know how it's called, this kind of substance came and killed people in a village nearby in 1961. We will show to you now a few minutes footage, and you will have an impression how this project, Babin Yar Context, how the documentary footage look like, because it's rework and we put in sound on it.
It's Kurenivskaya tragedy I mentioned before.
Yeah. It's 13th September 1961 at 8:30 a.m.
Camp was broken.
Okay, thank you. There's many many different episodes. Some of them is talking about time after Second World War, because it's another chapter of Babin Yar history. Is part when it was not remembered, when they tried to forget it, and we just give you some impression about this project by Sergei Lesnitsa. And now, Ksenia, please. Now we're moving to the present time, because present time also important part of our project.
Hello to everybody. My name is Ksenia Marchenko. I'm the producer of the documentary film project Conversation, we name it like that. This is really the project which can connect the past and the future. From one hand, we have the tragedy which took place, has happened 79 years ago. And from another hand, we have the society of Ukraine, which is not very open to think and addressing the history, to be critical to the current times and to the times of the history which influenced on us. And for that reason, the big question was how to make the topic of Babin Yar, tragedy of Holocaust, important for people who live nowadays, and through which format, through which connection, through which contact we can do that. And the documentary video project is the question for that, I guess. We want to create thousands of interviews with people who live all around the country, in villages, in cities, in small towns, and ask them very simple questions from one hand, from another very deep, which can illustrate the history, and give the people the possibility to talk about their memories which they share from generation to generation. We also ask them about their personal values, about the, I don't know, different things which people appreciate and treasure for nowadays. In general, we can summarize and we can say that this project is about contemporary Ukrainians, what do they remember, how they remember, and what is the place of Holocaust memories are in their memories. How does it work now? We film these interviews through Zoom or other gadgets and programs. because of Corona, of course. We also have the tagging system where every video of these 1,000, which is already filmed, is tagged with the senses of which people do remember. And this amount of senses is possible to search and to serve on the web platform. People who we don't have any prejudice to ask people questions which we are interested in. These people are behind 19 years old. They are from different, they are connected to different professions. They have different beliefs, gender, whatever. That's why, therefore, it is really the documentary project where the interviewee is given the possibility to a person to tell the personal story, of memory. I guess this is very important for such type of the memorial center as we are the platform who creates the dialogue between the society. Thanks a lot. Maybe if there is a need, we can show the short video teaser.
Thank you. Are there any questions for either Ksenia or for Ilya?
Let's show the video.
Just to understand, we're gonna hop into kind of like a more of an open discussion format after this.
Yeah, so the idea was that kind of after all the foundation projects have been presented, for there to be a short question and answer, and then for Manuel to present the synagogue project, and then for that to be an extensive discussion, or to lead into an extensive discussion that that brings all these things together.
Okay, thanks.
So
let's video, yeah.
Я тут.
А ви любили колись?
Так, дуже сильно.
Какой для вас самый главный принцип в жизни?
Как бы ты хотел, чтобы тебя помнили?
Не знаю, мене море завжди притягувало.
Может быть, я спасу утопающий корабль.
Жизнь состоялась.
Привет.
Багато що радує.
Вот я сейчас покурю сигарету и обрадуюсь.
От другой прабабушки у нас есть картина. Покажу, вот так вот это выглядит.
Я навіть не можу знайти інформацію.
О чем ты мечтаешь?
Який у тебе найприємніший спогад з дитинства?
Если бы была такая возможность что-то изменить.
Я не хотел бы жить в условиях коммунизма, я не хотел бы жить в условиях нацизма.
Ну реально, были голодные 90-е, тут тебе каждый день дают глазурированный сырок. Вот это было классно.
Я маме сказал, что я не ее сыночек, я советский солдат.
Для меня Бабин Яр – это остановка транспорта.
Потому что часть моей семьи была расстреляна в Бабьем Яру.
В Бабиному Яру я відчуваю зв'язок з історією.
Вы когда-то были в Бабьем Яру? Нет.
Любовь как бы должна быть, так сказать, первопричина всего вообще. Жизнь должна получаться из любви.
Okay, now two more projects which done together with Michael Ziger, is a great historian and writer. And please show the short video of these two projects.
This is Blue Champagne, a hit record by Jimmy Dorsey and his orchestra, which tops the Billboard chart on September 27th, 1941. On this day, shootings start in Kyiv, and nobody in the world even knows about them. Mobile Theatre presents a documentary audio performance for individual listening on the spot of the tragedy. On each particular location, a visitor hears about a person who was murdered here or a story of a survivor. Along the way from one location to another, a listener learns about things that were happening on September 29th and 30th, 1941, in completely different parts of the world, with completely different people. Dina Pronicheva is 30 years old. She's an actress in Kyiv Puppet Theatre. At 8 a.m. on September 29th, she's standing in the line for shooting. At the end of the day, when her turn comes, she manages to fall into the ravine before the shot and pretends to be dead. It saves her life. And this is Serge Lifar. He is 36. He's from Kyiv too. He had been living here till the age of 18. Now he lives in France. And on the day of Kyiv shootings, he takes part in a performance for German officers at a POW charity event. 15-year-old Ruvim Stein is also standing in the line. But when the female and male lines separate, his mother cries to him, "Run!" And he runs and hides in a pipe, hearing machine gun fire. And this is his idol, Charlie Chaplin. He's running too. On this day, he is playing tennis against famous player Bobby Riggs. The audience applauds. Raisa Dashkevich is 25. While walking to Babin Yar in the crowd, she still believes that it will end well. There still was hope that we will be sent somewhere, that they can't shoot such a mass of people. At the time of the shooting, Raisa passes out. And Marion Miley is 27. She's a golfer and one of the most popular female athletes in the USA. On the day of mass shootings in Kyiv, she with her mother arrives to the city of Lexington, Kentucky. Early in the morning, two masked men break into her apartment. Before robbing, they kill Marion with 2 shots and mortally wound her mother. On the following day, this murder makes the newspaper headlines in the USA, Canada, Britain and Australia. For 2 days, Babin Yar has become a place of ultimate concentration of human despair. Immersion into this story and its context is a step toward understanding the scale of the disaster, which had cut short more than 30,000 lives.
Тизер проєкту «Інтерактивний щоденник. Нульова фаза розвитку проєкту» буде доступний на сайті фонду з 29 вересня. Ми покажемо декілька ситуацій життя різних героїв, пов'язаних із Бабиним Яром. Спершу глядач не знатиме контексту ситуацій. Ми попросимо глядача стати на місце персонажа, аби вирішити, що слід робити в цій ситуації. Після відповіді на просте запитання глядач побачить повний контекст, у якій ситуації опинилися персонажі. Відтак ми додаватимемо все більше персонажів, тож глядач поступово поринатиме в дилеми дедалі більшої кількості людей. Це буде лише початок шляху, точніше безліч різних шляхів нашого інтерактивного щоденника.
Yeah, I think it's not the whole video, but the general, because it's just few projects from 27 projects what we have now, just to give you an impression that we're doing quite different things, and all of them they're already part of the project or will be part of the future exhibition. There's also audio installation. All of you saw the video, which already 24 hours existing on the side of Babin Yar. But I think it's important to move. Maybe if we can discuss it very shortly, briefly, we can do it. We can do next time other part of presentation, the scientific, educational, and other bits of our project, is if you like. But I think if we can discuss it shortly, and then as soon as possible move to synagogue project, which is a very important project for foundation, and I think for this kind of movement, because what we're doing and why we're trying to do it so quickly, things maybe more quickly than usual, because we're trying to move understanding of the place, and the people has to something different, and we try to create a life there, life around the whole theme of Babin Yar, and life around the actual place. If you have any question, please ask.
I have one question. You know, when you were in a very complicated lawsuit, and have been once in my life in it, there's always the thing is going to either survive or sink on the basis of the central thesis of the case, which holds everything together. So I wonder if all of these projects, is there a single paragraph? I mean, I don't need to hear it now, or a single sentence that in some way allows us to basically see the constellation of all these things as a single project.
I think it depends from point of view to the project. It depends from your interest. For us, and for me, it was important to create many entrance points to the story, because if we'll talk about it just about the event of 2 days, just about Jewish, this doesn't work. But also it's not possible to understand what actually happened there. It's complicated to understand. For me, is the question where we probably will not get answer. How it can happen with human being, and all the story. How it's this kind of things happen in life, and it's happen not with somebody else. It's happened with us. And this feeling that it's happened not with somebody in the past, but it's something what exists now. Just to change this gap between nowadays and the past. It's important task. But we're growing the project. It's a process of growing the things, and not just the building.
Actually, so I have a
yeah.
Can I ask then, Ilya? I want to get a sense. It's super helpful to see this and see what's been cooking. I'm trying to wrap my head around like really basic things, like kind of where we are in the timeline. So I'm just like, the stupid question is like, when did each of these projects start, and how far along are they in their progression, and like, and what percentage of the labor of the whole institution do they represent? Because I'm realizing we've been having these conversations now for almost 2 months, and it's sort of like each week there's new information, and I'm trying to get a sense of how much of the picture do I have. So yeah.
You have 34%.
Okay.
I can look. I mean, we have. There was 3 years before me and a new team arrived. 3 years of work of the foundation, and they did a lot of administrative work. They create a historical narrative. Then when I arrived end of the last year, almost a year ago, actually precise a year ago. And we start to build a team, and most of the team was built like until February and January, February, like core team. Then we start to work and to build things, and the principle was act now. Let's do things that museum exists from now. Don't wait for the physical building. And through this process, try to understand what actually we are doing, how the project should look like. And I also asked 1 year for the concept, to create the concept, what actually we're doing there. It was very clear that we're not doing just the building on the spot. We need to have a site, we need to have a territory, and we need to have bigger picture of everything. And we can do it only through the process of creating the products. Then pandemic came, we changed the way to do it on a physical part of Kyiv, and we move more to online products. And now we have around 60 people who are working. and you see, I think, like half of heads of the departments, and many products already done, and it's a lot of footage is collected, a lot of things in the process, and now we building the program for next year. And the idea was that if it's needed to open exhibition like in 2 months, we can do it. We can do it in Kyiv or in Amsterdam or somewhere else, and we need to have something what people can feel. Also, if people interested in the Holocaust theme, or if they're not interested, it should be something what can touch them.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I'll just add one short thing just to give a sense of why I'm asking that. My impression, especially after today, is that you're moving very quickly. You're sort of like sprinting into creating, like attempting to capture a bunch of information, collecting things, making yourself in the position to launch a museum at some point if that's the direction you go, but nonetheless, doing things and doing many things. And so I guess the sort of question that I have to myself is how to be most useful to you. It sort of feels like I need to start sprinting at the same speed that you're running at. And then I guess the question is, are you looking for us to help you with sort of refining and almost, you know, Robert Jan's question, right? What is the sort of mission or the kind of something that glues it together? Or is it kind of still more like a brainstorm process where it's like more ideas, more ideas, more ideas? Like I'm wondering what brain mode I should be in. Am I refining, or are we kind of like going wide and throwing things out and seeing what sticks?
We're doing both simultaneously. Because important thing that we don't losing a possibility to get new ideas and new layers and new points of view to the story, because it's, I mean, if you just build now the Holocaust Museum, who will go there? Especially in Kyiv, not in the center of the city, who will go there? Who need it? Of course, the school buses will arrive, of course, all the officials of all the Jews, but you need to have something about life, about genocide itself, about Jewish life, which was killed because it was a life killed, it was diaspora life, and then this diaspora just stopped to exist. You need to, and we trying to, we're touching different not the project, different way of thinking about that. And then we're trying to see how far we can go. We start with Maxim Rahmanika, with 3D model, with simple thing. And then when we start work with him, we get further, and then we see that we have more perspective to build. Then we can see what kind of things an exhibition can be done. And the idea that in 20 years, it's keep going. It's keeping be alive. The main task, not just to build the building with permanent exhibition, to build a life which will all the time creating new feelings, new emotions, what can touch people who doing that and people who are coming there, digitally or physically.
Oh yeah, let me stop you, please, because we need to move on. People need to leave by the end of the hour. Troy, I'm not 100% sure that answered your question. But I also, yeah, it's a very difficult question to ask, but I think, you know, we are also going to be finding that out. And I think actually Manuel's, the work that he's proposing is kind of the next step in this process. And I think that, you know, I would like to move to his presentation, which will allow us to think through this question, I think, a lot further. So before Manuel presents, I'd like to do a very quick presentation just of the brief that he was given, because I'm not sure, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. If you give me just 1 second. Yep. Okay, so you see my screen. Let me see, I'm actually not used to using preview. Okay, so this is the map of the current site, and that was shown before by Anna. This is the evolution over the past years, right? So this is just kind of like putting us into the place. This is the site in relation to Kiev. This is the park as it looks like now. This red dot is the site for the synagogue that is going to be built. An important note, Ілля mentioned this, the synagogue is planned to be built by January 27th, 2021. That is in under 3 months for the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. But more on that later. You can see here that the site of the Holocaust sits on the edge of a former cemetery and also on the edge of the ravine of the topography. Here you can see it in relationship to the other objects and other buildings, other memorials on site. And so here you can see its relationship to the existing topography. This is the historical model with the placement of the site, and this is also the historical, and then this is the present condition. So this was the brief. Approximately 100 square meters. You know, as we are treating this land as a burial site, there are no foundations allowed, and the point is to connect the ravine to the old land to the new land. Let's say. Here's the site. It's right behind one of the main memorials of the menorah. This is the site again, the site again, the site again, and this is the ravine right behind it. So that's it for me. I will now hand it over to Manuel, and he will present his proposal for this site and for this brief. Thank you.
Great, Nick. Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving me the chance to present. I hope the screen sharing will work. 1 second. Let's see, where do I have it? Because not everybody knows me, I thought I'll share very rapidly, and I think everybody's a bit exhausted already, a few images of work that I've been doing before or besides the project. I've been very much involved in this topic before by building a synagogue in Mainz, which celebrates the diaspora, celebrates the cultural production outside of Israel, using text as a way to, as a method to kind of shape the building. 1 million Hebrew letters that kind of clad the interior of the synagogue, but also kind of celebrates life and kind of everydayness of life, which I think is represented very well in this photograph. People don't have any kind of problem of approaching the synagogue very closely, which is quite rare in Germany. They just walk their dogs and eat their lunch sandwich. I'm also now involved in redesigning and renovating the Synagogue of Cologne, which is the oldest Jewish community north of the Alps, a building that was destroyed in the Second World War and then reconstructed in a kind of hybrid of, this was before the war, kind of Orientalism in a way, in a style, and then this is after the war, 1950s. And now, after 60 years again, I'm kind of the third architect in a row to work on this project. Very, very differently, but you'll maybe recognize some elements that will come in later. I've been working on housing projects such as this one, a project which is almost like a mechanical toy that can, that a building whose facade can kind of open up, close, move, transform itself radically. Kind of as a final reference amongst my projects, the topic of, again, exile, diaspora, refugees, refugee nation, a national pavilion for a refugee nation at the Venice Biennale, and the construction itself using the material of the tapestry to represent architectural production, and the tapestry being a kind of collective production, a collective work in order to perform a building. A few images, one of these was acquired by the MoMA. But now to the site and to the proposal, and I have to say, I think the first conversation I had with Ілля was about 10 days ago, so everything is very rapid, very quick. Some of it is still a bit raw. We have the site north of the menorah that you've seen before. We have the direction towards Jerusalem. If you want to build a synagogue, we should orient it towards Jerusalem. And I think an approach to the site would be nice if it's kind of from the back, if it's not straight from the plaza, from this menorah square, but more meandering, more kind of finding it. And then I was thinking what to do, and in a way, a very simple thought, if we reduce the synagogue to its absolutely essential, we would reduce it to the book. The book, in a way, encompasses the synagogue in its most essential. And what we do when we go into the synagogue, we open the book and we read. And anyway, this act of opening a book, I thought, why not use that exactly, very, very literally almost, as the topic for the architectural design. And there's a genre of that. Books that open up and produce a new world, produce a kind of a Wunderkammer, a cabinet of curiosities, but I prefer the German word, this kind of wandering, that open up and out of a 2D thing, a 3D universe emerges. And maybe not by accident, often these are almost architectural typologies that kind of open up a circus, a building, a railway station, whatever. And I thought this is in a way wonderful, because a pop-up book, it's exactly what a synagogue does. A synagogue, you take a book, you open it, and you emerge or you immerse yourself in a new world, and you discover things that you would not discover. And I think we all cannot resist the kind of temptation of opening these kind of pop-up books and discovering the third dimension, fourth dimension, the mystery of them. And it kind of goes into detail and can open up more and more and more things. This Wunderkammer. So I thought, let's do exactly that. We have the site. We maybe create a platform on which it sits, so not to penetrate the ground. This is oriented towards Jerusalem on the short side. We would maybe approach it. I don't know if you can see my mouse from the north. We place a book that is 10 meters high, 7 meters wide, that can open up. We open it up for Shabbat, maybe Friday afternoon, and then Saturday night or Sunday morning, we close it again. It is really a physical object. It's really material. It's mechanical. It's physical. It's work that needs to be done to open it. If we imagine it on the site, it could maybe look like this. It's produced out of wood, so it really has this kind of material quality. It also smells of the wood. It takes 10 people, or it takes labor and force to open it up. It's maybe exactly the opposite of the work that we've done, that we've seen before, which was amazing. I was really amazed by this, but there's nothing mediated there. It uses no media, it uses no projections or anything. It really uses the physicality of itself to be performative, to be like a ritual. You open it up before Shabbat, you use it, you have 10 chairs, you have the women's gallery, you have the Aron HaKodesh, you have the Ner Tamid. All these elements kind of unfold like a mystic process, and then at the end of Shabbat, fold back again, close, and it remains a little bit mysterious what this object actually is. It becomes almost two-dimensional again. And I think this is really quite a good way, I would claim, but I would want to hear your thoughts and your judgment and your critique on working, a good way to work on the site, because it barely touches it. It doesn't impose this kind of synagogishness onto the site. It doesn't scream out, hey, I'm the synagogue with my vaulted dome or something, but it has a certain kind of modesty. And it references maybe the wooden architecture of Ukraine or Western Russia. It references maybe these kind of mystical machines of the Renaissance, but it also references maybe the futurism of the Russian constructivist of the 1910s, 1920s. I think many questions kind of remain. What kind of material do we use? Where does the wood come from? How permanent is it? Do we only use wood? Where do the services come from? Who's going to use the synagogue? But I'll leave it now to the discussion in the forum. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you, Manuel.
I am just so Manuel, thank you. If it opens like that and it's January, I'm assuming it's quite cold. Is there some sort of like transparent enclosure envelope or something, or is it truly just open to the elements?
Like I said, we started designing this 8 days ago, so not every issue has been yet solved, but I'm very sure that we can solve it. Actually, Роберта Ян sent me a beautiful image of a textile enclosure that could be unfolded. I'm very fond of using carpets, tapestries, and they could be part of this unfolding process to cloak it, to wrap it, and to warm it. That would be one of the options to deal with the issue of climate of the winter.
Just so I understand that, so that is the intention, is that it actually gets used as a synagogue. It's not a kind of folly, it's not a symbolic synagogue, it's a working synagogue.
On the contrary, I think Ілля, also please come in. It shouldn't be symbolic, it should be very real, physical, it should be performed and it should be used. And this act of using it is important.
It's super important. The fact for me is that Jewish people, also Orthodox Jews, they're coming and they do the service there. Maybe they're coming for even trying to probably to organize a hostel where they can stay and coming and do the service. And the fact that Orthodox Jews becoming to be part of everyday life of Babin Yar, it's important. And
are you in touch with any rabbis? Do you know of any pre-existing Jewish communities that are interested in using this space?
Yes, but we're talking not about local Jewish community. We're talking mostly about Jews who coming there. And also Роберта Ян suggests, I think it's great idea that that many Jewish people coming to Ukraine because there's a graves of great famous rabbis, and they're coming once a year to different, but it's many times a year actually, to different graves, and all of them coming to Kiev. And if we will do, we'll give them possibility to stay overnight, they can also pray in this kind of holy place, and try to make Babin Yar is a place where people coming especially to pray. It's very important. But we are in touch with two main rabbis of Ukraine and Kiev who are supporting the idea. We also had a consultancy with other rabbis. Yes, and all of them supporting this idea and thinking that it's very important.
Who would like to go next? Nicholas?
Yeah, please. Hi, everybody. I joined rather late, just for Manuel's presentation, I have to say. I guess besides all the very important practical issues that were addressed before now, I think it's a really, really strong project because it seems to me that it also, I think it's a wonderful provocation also, and it has a very strong meaning just being there, whatever the duration of the project will be. But I think it's a very strong, although not imposing monument also to a certain extent, like as a gesture. And I think it brings also within the history of synagogues two interesting things together. So I think, as you said, Manuel, it's not trying to be a temple to a certain extent. And So I think it's an interesting negotiation between, on the one hand, the temple with its kind of claim of duration, and on the other hand, the very temporary element of what in early times the tabernacle was somehow this very temporary condition of praying and of doing the service. And I think this is for me something very, very strong and something I've never seen. And I think that's really unique.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Yain?
Yes, can I share the screen for a moment, my screen? I just want to show one picture while I'm talking.
Sure.
Okay. I just want to point out, this is actually very basic to the iconography of the Ark of the Covenant, that normally it wasn't actually carried, it was actually rolled, it was actually on a wagon. And that's the way it went through Canaan and also through the desert. So I love this project. I think it's incredibly strong, and there's so many aspects to it which I think work well. The one piece that actually, in relationship to the base, which I think is in some way the essential piece, because we cannot create any foundations, I just actually wonder if a wheeled piece would work, because it also would allow us actually to reach out to, I think, is a very important story of the Holocaust, which we tend to forget, and that is the fate of the Roma Sinti, who basically shared the fate of the Jews, and especially in Eastern Europe. That, when we talk about Transnistria, the killings that happened there, we talk about the ghettos. Quite often it was the Roma Sinti and the Jews who were put together. That's also how they ended up together in Auschwitz. And I think to in some way create, let's call it an opening. I mean, we're talking. I think when we're talking about commemorating the Holocaust, I think the whole issue is to also, in our language and in our projects, to open up to the other victim groups, and to and I think that simply putting wheels under this thing actually would allow us a discussion about peoples in exiles and about other victim groups. So I've sent you yesterday a little bit that I was talking about the description of the tabernacle, and it's all about the doing. That the book, the opening of the book, it is actually not either this or that, but the magic, and I think in some way what Manuel said, is actually in the act of the codex opening, of unfolding and closing, because that is actually the key discovery and the key decision to close it again. And I think that's where, for me, the whole project would ultimately rest. It's not actually in either its closed or open state, but in that process, we talk about the 10 men, quote unquote, the quorum, the minye, that actually is able to do that. And that's where I would think much of the design problem would rest, of how that actually works, not as a technical, but also as a, let's call it, a liturgical act.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Correct.
Yeah. So I guess my perspective is specific in that I'm not Jewish. And so I've actually never been in a synagogue. And as someone who was raised Catholic, when I go traveling, I have no problem walking into a Christian church. So I'm, go to old Europe or something like that, and there's a cathedral, and I have no problem going inside. I have a little bit of a capacity to have a sense of the organization and some of the symbolism and the stories that are kind of baked into the walls and so on. But the main thing I think is I have no fear going inside, because I know that it's permitted. I know what goes on inside, and so I'm not worried that I'm going to open the door into a space I'm not supposed to be. I'm not going to vulgarize something that's sacred. And I guess I'm wondering, and that's also why I've never been in a synagogue. I don't know, can I open the door and go in? I'm not sure if I'm supposed to. If I walk in and there's a service going on, is that going to disrupt everything? Did I ruin it for everyone? And so I guess for me, where I would kind of really want to understand is, for me, the way of, you know, if the project has two states, the open like service state and then the closed state, the state that kind of maybe interests me most is the closed state, right? Because that's how a synagogue looks to me. It looks like a closed book. And so if part of the audience for this is, you know, potentially Jewish people gathering for this service and so on, that's fantastic. But also for people who are not Jewish, how does it not just become a closed book and therefore kind of reinforce that idea that this is not for you, you don't understand, you don't know how to open the door. Literally the door collapses into 2 dimensions when the people who are enlivening the space go away. And then I guess likewise, when it's happening, I'm wondering how, you know, is it permissible to put such a service on display such that non-Jews can actually see what goes on? Because there's something I think about the creation of empathy when you can observe and possibly even come close to participating in a really kind of, and I know thanks to Роберта Ян now that synagogues are not sacred space, but an important communal event. And I feel like if generation of empathy is one of the things that this can do, I wonder how you do that for non-Jews.
Can I just jump in on this one? Because actually I've written on this problem. So I'm going to send you a piece. It's a memoir of exactly what you're talking about this idea of entering into a synagogue and feeling not welcome. Yeah, and that's basically and this idea of what am I doing in this close community. That's all I'm going to say about it. I will send it. Maybe to Nick, because there are people in the meeting today who are not whose email I don't have. Nick, you can send it to everyone else. But I think you put your finger right on, I think, an absolutely essential piece there.
Yeah, thank you.
Should I respond or
I'd appreciate that, yeah.
Yeah. I agree with Robert. It's incredibly important questions, and more as a footnote, that's also something that really drove the design of the Mainz synagogue, where I said it has to be very public, it has to be accessible, and people should not feel inhibited or shy to approach and eventually to enter the synagogue. Of course, you can enter the synagogue and also be witness to a ceremony, be witness to the Shabbat. And for this one in Bабин Яр, I would respond initially maybe in 2 ways, but I would also have to think more about it. One is when it is in use, it is very accessible by this fact of being opened up. So it should be also maybe easy for passers-by to enter. When it's not in use, it gives indication signs that there is something special. But you shouldn't maybe wander into the synagogue on your own when it's not in use. So it has this kind of, that's the state when the book is closed. Of course, when I said it can open up Friday afternoon and close Sunday morning, we don't need to be strict about it. We can open it whenever it wants to be used, or whenever there's a minyan, for example, a minyan, 10 people to kind of enact the synagogue. Now, what is wonderful about the synagogue is from a profane space to a special place, this process goes through congregating a minyan, 10 people, the book, and basically the Ner Tamid light. This kind of giving indications in its closed state that there's something special, and being quite open, literally open in the open state is maybe a way to answer to your questions.
Also, it's what I want to say that we are now in the process of conversation with different rabbis, and of course they will be also involved in this kind of conversation, and all of them told that it's important to have something probably extra or part of it, like another bit where religious people can have when they have a water, they have some other element what is necessary to be there. But we how Manuel just said, we just start this conversation. The main idea is, of course, is this book, and then is a functional things what will be developed in the process, right, Manuel?
Yeah, and I think it's important to discuss this also in the forum. Now, who will use it? Is there a permanent element next to it, behind it, on the side, kind of hidden or visible? I don't have a position on that yet. I would love to hear the forum, you to see or to hear your opinion. How permanent should be the elements, and or how fragile should it be?
I think it should. That so far we discussed with supervisory board and with the rabbis. All of them have the same opinion that it should be some permanent, like stone or some permanent fundamental element. Also because, for example, Orthodox Church, which is next to our future synagogue, which already exists there, it was burned, I think 10 times or something like that. And it's important also for us to have a statement that there's something what from one hand is super fragile, from other hand fundamental. But how from the architectural point of view it should be on site, or how it should be, we don't know, and what is precise elements should be there, we don't know yet. And I really like the Manuel idea, and I think it's super inspiring, unique idea, and this emotional element of opening and unfolding the synagogue, and to be open to people. I think it's also very unique and a brave and beautiful statement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel.
I think also the fragility that actually comes out really nicely through your presentation, Manuel, of the synagogue. That's actually its strength, right? Even if it collapses, either by vandalism or by weather or sheer time, I think it's the beauty of it to that it needs a degree of maintenance. It doesn't work alone, right? So if it's broken, then you have to rebuild it, and there will be always somebody who will take care of it. So it's kind of like keeping the light on in this project. So it's kind of the way I would read it. So to make it actually, it has, Manuel made it really ghost-like, right? This kind of with the birches and as if it's kind of really, it can just appear, which is very beautiful. I have a question actually with that appearance, because I kind of, I'm kind of not clear about where we are and why this site has been chosen. And let's say, who owns what, also the territory of this place. We are kind of very close to this monument of the menorah. And then you say there's the church, and I feel like I would like to know why it's located there, and also what does the city, do we have all the permissions from the city, let's say, on that, the use of that park, the timing of that, is that, how will it be perceived by, let's say, the citizens who live nearby?
It's belong to, this part is belong to the state. It's very nearby to the place where we will build probably the main building of our museum. It's just next behind menorah and 200 meters from the Orthodox Church, which was built there. This is territory of ex-Orthodox cemetery. Years ago. In this bit, so far we know there was there was no graves, but anyway, it belonged to them.
No.
We know that this initiative is supported by association of all the religious leaders in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan to build a synagogue was from like tens of years ago, but was never happened. And they have it in a plan, but more far and in kind of not so interesting place. And also to decide about another place, it's just on site there. And this place, because it's also next to the church, and church also built from the wood, it's also creating kind of interesting dialogue between them. And it's next to ravine as well, next to the actually one of the few existing elements of the past. And menorah there is kind of very traditional element, was built like almost 30 years ago. And it's kind of on the corner between Jewish cemetery and Orthodox cemetery, and the place where the Jews was killed. And all the Jewish prayer in commemoration days happen actually there, in the place where we're building that. That's why it was kind of logic. And we know that we cannot do, if we do it there, there is no chance to make a mistake, because it's part of, it's like you're just extending the reality there. If you're doing it somewhere else, then you need to have a master plan and to have a very clear understanding what actually doing. Now it's a question of extension, of growing. You just grow, you grow meaning, and you grow the reality. And of course, it's the question why we're doing everything so quickly, again and again coming. But my answer is very simple, because I think we have a possibility to do it now, because many years, tens of years, it was a lot of plans, but nothing was done. And because now is the time, and now is the year of 80th anniversary of 1941 September 1941 massacre, we know that now we can do things, and they will be accepted, they will be understandable, they can be understood, and also the fact that Orthodox Church already exists there, and it's great because it's a place where you can pray, people coming to pray there. I think to have just next to the Orthodox Church synagogue, how it was actually cemetery and Jewish cemetery and Orthodox cemetery next to each other, I think it's something very beautiful and important.
Can I maybe weigh in here for a little bit? Because I've been thinking a lot about this project, and I think, Manuel, I mean, it's incredible how you've come up with kind of such like an ingenious solution to this kind of an enormous set of problems and issues. And I think, you know, what you've designed is really beautiful. It's perfect. It's exactly kind of it's exactly, you know, what I think we could have possibly hoped for out of this. But you know what I've been thinking about over the past couple of days is like what this project says. Also, like thinking about this more performatively, like what trajectory does this put the foundation on? And you know, one way that I've been kind of thinking about this is that, like, if kind of for some like catastrophic reason, you know, next year or in 2 years, the foundation ceased to exist, Manuel, what you're making, and you know, without having a museum being built, Manuel, what you're making would blend in perfectly to the existing landscape of Babin Yar, right? So I think that at first I was like, well, I didn't know how I felt about that, but then when I started thinking about this a little bit further, okay, so it's a little bit bigger. But, you know, it would form like one piece among the commemorative landscape that is already there. But when I thought about this, it actually really changed my feeling towards the rest of the site of Babin Yar. Like, I feel like with the foundation, it's like, oh, well, actually, like, you know, we need to create the memorial to end all memorials. But actually, like, there's so many memorials already there. And that in and of itself, I think, is quite amazing. And so to me, like, what this project does performatively is that it signals a kind of, by blending into the landscape, it actually speaks to like, well, this entire place, the park itself, has been becoming over the past 80 years a memorial, right? There are all of these different memorials around. And I think the fact that this like blends in so well is just testament to that as, you know, perhaps actually like a very meaningful strategy. And so, you know, I guess now in this is also maybe trying to touch on some things that Troy was getting to. I wonder, like, you know, if we're kind of building this at, you know, and blending in, like, why not actually just kind of really take this kind of model, take this concept as that of like what we're doing as a memorial, right? That it's not about like building one giant memorial, but it's actually about like constantly adding to the memorial landscape that is existing on Babin Yar. So maybe, you know, like for a reference, you know, I've been thinking about, you know, like some, I mean, maybe they're Catholic necropolises or just necropolises as a whole, right? Where you walk into this space, or you know, maybe for some people, this might make sense. I'm thinking of like the sculptures in Gorky Park, right? Where like you walk into this landscape and you're just surrounded by the presence of people and of memory and so I don't know. I just, for me, like I really appreciate that this project that Manuel has made is like allowing me to think about this and of this potential future for Babin Yar. But I think, you know, now that we're in the process of like deciding the concept, I wonder how like this synagogue will relate to the wider concept as a whole, because I think that there's a lot of different ways and a lot of very strong potential ways. But yeah.
Can I react with a few words? Thank you, Nick, for your positive feedback. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. I was also reminded when I was speaking with Ілля for the first time of an old project of John Haydock. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Victims, which is this beautiful 50 or something small little interventions on in Berlin Gestapo headquarters. And there's nothing dominant. There's 50 very playful projects, and it's not. Роберта Ян was using the word, or was in the chat saying we need to think of the word tragedy. I agree. It's doing that in a sometimes very playful way. You smile sometimes, and I think it's not a sacrilege. Why not? And I also like Ines's comment. It needs a caretaker. It has a fragility. It needs a caretaker, and when the caretaker is gone, maybe it collapses. But that's also a sign that it's very revealing if the caretaker is gone, and that fragility I think is important. And absolutely, I do love a monument that consists of 50 or something interventions rather than the big mothership. But I would like to also come back again to the question of how permanent is it, and could we not have that as this fragility almost as a not as a rule is maybe a silly word, but as something that characterizes many of these interventions.
Yeah. Robert Young.
Yes, I think that the general, if we're looking at Holocaust memorials as they were created in park-like settings, former concentration camp sites, and so the general tendency since 1945 has been to create a single monument, because there was always this need to basically exercise control, good taste, to get the ideological message straight. And that people wouldn't deviate from it. So that's what you have in Auschwitz, that's what you have in Sachsenhausen, Buchenwald, and so on. The great exception to that is Mauthausen. And Mauthausen for me is actually the closest thing that would in some way echo what Nick was talking about, which is that ultimately it's a constellation of all kinds of memorials. Some of them are by, in the case of Mauthausen, by national groups, the Dutch ex-prisoners, Yugoslav ex-prisoners. But then you get an overlaying, between Yugoslav before 1989 or in 1995, and then Serbia afterwards. You get the East German memorial, and then at a certain moment it is, taken into the German one. And then even the possibility, the question is, can you actually have individual memorials? And that, of course, is going to be very important once you're having that database, once you're actually going now to, because I think the data.
Well, Robert Jan, your mic just cut out. Nope. Yeah.
Now, I think that what's going to happen is that when you are going to have the database of individuals who were murdered there, and I use the verb murder very consciously, then I think you're also going to get individual claims that people will want, once that relationship with the site is done, you will get requests from people to do something there. Yeah, the great-grandchildren, the great-great-grandchildren. And I think at this moment already, in some way, in most places like Auschwitz and so on, they say absolutely not. You're not allowed to do that. 9999. I mean, the German language is very good for that, or the niet niet. But I think that right now we actually have to think what is going to be the response of the foundation or of the civil authorities to those individual monuments, which I think in Nick's understanding of a constellation will actually, it will allow the foundation to be much more flexible, which I think is why I think it's the perspective you're taking is, I think, the correct, certainly the more sensible one.
And I mean, to take this to kind of like a logical extreme, right? What if there was almost like a mausoleum built for each family? How many families do you have now? Like 1,000? Not people, but families, right? But it's more about this approach towards memorialization, right? I think that this is not. I think the projects that have been presented today, I think, are very, very impressive and very important, and they do need a space to be exhibited. There's no question about that, but I mean, Ilya, you're always looking for something more, right? But then so I think that giving this space over to people, yeah, I mean, I find, Manuel's proposal very inspiring for that.
Thank you. I will need to leave in a few minutes, unfortunately. Yeah, so I will just step out.
We are past the time. I mean, we were scheduled to go till 5 or 5 my time, right? So yeah, if anyone needs to leave, I would certainly understand.
Emmanuel, thank you so much for the project and for being today with us.
No, thank you, and thank you everybody for this incredibly insightful and also kind of pointed critiques and comments. Troy, I take your comments very seriously, and we need to bring it maybe more into the project. What you said.
Yeah, so. It's really lovely, and I guess the one thing that just kept popping out to me as a possible way of addressing that is just, what do you put on the walls? Robert Jan showed us some images of early synagogues the other day, and there's a lot of imagery, mythology, stories, etc. And I'm wondering how if there's impetus, if there's a possibility, if there's an interest to make that translate to a broader audience than just people that already know how to consume those imagery or that imagery. Then I think there's also a really interesting like history of buildings that are literally books, right? Like the pyramid text is the oldest religious text that's surviving as far as I know. And it's like, you know, inscribed on the inside of a pyramid. So there is really interesting historical precedents to how books become, or how buildings become books, that I think there could be more and more metaphors or kind of like vectors of inspiration that get layered onto what you already have in a productive way.
I guess we're going to hang the portrait of Victor Hugo on one of the walls. Textiles are very important, by the way. I think that, you know, the key decorative piece in a synagogue is always the curtain in front of the place where the Torah is stored. And the second most important decorative piece is actually the carpet, so to speak, the textile on which the Torah is actually laid when it's being read. And those are, you know, those would be significant, I would say, commissions in this whole project.
Yeah, I agree, Robert. I always say, I think the two main cultural contributions that the Jews have made is text and textile. And maybe it's no accident that they're very much related. This is what they're good at.
Yeah, and I just want to say that one of the most important 18th century Torah curtains that is in America was actually donated by my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents to the synagogue in Iserlohn, and it was removed on Kristallnacht, just before the synagogue was burned by a great cousin of mine, and smuggled to the US, and it's now on display in the Kimball Museum in LA. So yeah, it is something you can take with you. Again, the textile, you can just put it in your suitcase, in your bag, and you can carry it with you. And that's why they survive also.
Okay, bye, Manuel. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Manuel.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Okay, are there any further comments or questions?
I think it's a fantastic project. The technical aspects of it, I wouldn't want to take responsibility for having this up by the 27th of January, but I think it's inspired. And in my understanding of Judaism and the Jewish tradition, it should be a project as conceived, which I think would make history. You know, it is tied to 2,500 years of history. It speaks to that, and it would make history. So I think it would be, I think it would give the foundation incredible, certainly a boost in the public visibility, you know, in Israel and the American Jewish community, in the great diaspora community that exists today, if that is desirable.
Sorry, I wanted to have a comment on the plaza. So the platform that is going to be built for the book. And I think it's very interesting that when the book is closed, we have this empty plaza. In a way, we're giving a floor to another kind of activities. And it will be probably also important to think about this, what is the space there? And it's in a way makes another one plaza. So we have the plaza with this with the Minoha, and this is a plaza that is in the space of the woods and the nature, and it's in a little bit different space for, in a way, conversation.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
I really hope that Manuel can come back into the group and share updates to this project. I think it's something that, you know, yeah, we would very much all like to be a part of. I think I speak for everyone in the group, but
Thank you very much.
And yeah, I mean, Ілля, also, I think it will be very interesting to hear kind of, yeah, to also speak with you further about how this synagogue relates to your overall conceptual vision for the site. And, you know, now that we're like finally speaking in the language of architecture, how we might be able to think through that, you know, towards your like, and to see how that really fits in to your vision.
I think it's part of our general conversation what actually we are doing, and it's definitely part of the conversation of growing things, and I understand it's not the usual process of doing architectural projects, probably.
That's what makes this fun.
But I believe that is the way how we can move. And Роберт Ян, thank you so much for your very beautiful and meaningful text. What you share with us. It's very, very.
I still owe you an elevator speech, but I will work on that. But the other one, yes, okay.
Okay, so I guess if there are no other comments, I will kind of bring this session to a close. Thank you everyone for participating. And yeah, I look forward to speaking with all of you further about this and everything to come.
Yes, and talk about general concept. What is the really important part of what we're doing actually now. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Ciao.